So we'll be repeating that again tomorrow, so no pressure to those of you who are up for tomorrow, but amazing projects, very inspiring. I saw lots of people taking notes and exchanging ideas with each other, so really looking forward to tomorrow's project fair, and want to thank all of you for sharing today, who brought your clubhouse and clubhouse spirit with you. It's my pleasure to introduce a man who needs no introduction, which is always a difficult thing to do. I said yesterday that we couldn't possibly be where we are as a network 22 years strong without the support of Intel and our other partners at Best Buy and the MIT Media Lab. And in particular, that holds true for this person who I know all of you have had some contact with and benefited from. Mitchell Resnick not only co-founded the very first computer clubhouse 22 years ago, but has stayed involved and engaged both personally and professionally over the past 20 years, and has brought so many kindred spirits into the clubhouse movement through his own passion and his own commitment. And Mitchell, I just want to thank you personally for everything that you have done and continue to do, and welcome you to your 22nd annual conference of the Computer Clubhouse Network.
I also want to thank Gail and actually everybody in this room for helping to take those initial ideas from 22 years ago and turn it into the incredible network that there is now. It's just so inspiring to be able to spend some time with all of you and to see all the ways that those initial ideas from 22 years ago are flowering in so many different ways in different parts of the world. So it's exciting. I'm just going to the project fair. One thing in discussing it with some of you, one thing that really struck me was the great diversity of different things that you can see as you walk around the room. All the different ways that people are working on creative projects with new technologies. So even though there's a few guiding principles of the Computer Clubhouse, it's exciting to see how people take those guiding principles and bring them to life in so many different ways. And I do think we see this growing over time. I think yesterday Gail had mentioned that a couple years ago, at the annual conference, I talked about clubhouses as maker spaces. And then from the very beginning, we'd seen making things at the core of what clubhouses are about. But there was a real resurgence of interest in making in the physical world in recent years. And we talked about that a couple of years ago. And you really see how that continues to play out when you go through the project fair and you see people making with all sorts of different materials, and whether it's with cardboard or fabric and electronics and Lego bricks and different digital materials, you just see the wide range of different ways that people are taking these ideas about making and turning it into something personal where they can express their ideas through making with different things in the world. And to me, that really is at the core of what the clubhouse spirit is about. In the same way that I talked a couple of years ago about clubhouses and making, because the maker spirit was really growing through the maker fairs and maker clubs that were spreading all over the place. If I think back over the last 2 years, one thing that really has grown in the last couple of years is this interest in coding. I think all of you have heard it around you that even though it's not a new idea of kids learning to code, and this was also around from the very beginning of the very first computer clubhouse, some of the young people coming in to the initial clubhouse were coding to create different animated stories and games. But I think that we've seen in the last couple of years, throughout the whole culture, this growing and renewed interest in learning to code. And I decided to take that as the theme of what I would talk about today. But also, as you can see from the title, wanting to make sure we go beyond just learning to code, what might be called coding to learn. Because it's not just about learning the skill of coding. I think one reason that I've been so excited about coding for so long is that I see that through coding, you can learn so many other things. So it's not just about learning to code, but coding to learn other things through the activity of coding. And I think we've seen a lot of growing interest in the last couple of years, partly because of some very big initiatives. I think a lot of you are familiar with, there's a website, code.org, that is, they were the ones who started the Hour of Code. I know some clubhouses participated in, and they've had literally tens of millions of people who have gotten involved in doing some of their activities with learning to code, and more than 1 billion lines of code as they trumpet on their website. So there's a lot of activity going on out there. But again, I want to make sure that we look beyond just the activity of writing lines of code. We don't want to measure this just by numbers of lines of code that are written. But really, how does it change people's lives? How do people start to think differently and understand the world differently as they start to code? How do they start to create things that they care about? So as I think about coding, two important questions that always come to me when I hear all the enthusiasm around coding is why learn to code and how learn to code. And those are a couple things I want to talk about today. So why is it that this is of interest, and why should it be interesting to us as a Clubhouse community? And then how is it that we can support young people in learning to code? And I think some of the answers to the why question, at least for me, and I think for us as a community, are somewhat different than you might see from other people who are talking about learning to code these days. That a lot of times, if you go to a site like code.org, again, they're doing a lot of interesting things, but a lot of the goal is focused on preparing people who might become professional programmers in the future. And don't get me wrong, I think it's great for people to become professional programmers. There are some real opportunities there. There is this gap, there's a growing demand for professional programmers, there's not enough supply, so there are real career opportunities, there are good jobs there, I don't doubt any of that, I think that's all really important. But for me, that's not the most important reason for why to code. It's one reason, but for me, it's not the most important reason. So as I think about why to code, I'm always inspired by making the analogy with why do people learn to write? And we don't introduce writing to kids just because we expect kids to grow up and become professional writers. And again, it's great, some people will become professional writers, and that's great. But that's not why we want everyone to learn to write. We want people to learn to write because when you learn to write, you can start to express your ideas. You can take your ideas and share them with other people. And you can be part of the ongoing discussion in your community and sharing your ideas and feel like you're a full and active participant. Also, when you learn to write, it helps you organize your thinking. You might have lots of scattered ideas, but when you start to put them down on paper or on a screen or however it is you're writing, it helps you organize your ideas and think through things more clearly. So when you learn to write, it helps you organize your ideas, communicate your ideas, be part of a community. And for me, that's what's so important about learning to write. And it's one reason why a lot of literacy programs focus on reading. And again, reading is very important, but I feel there's never enough emphasis on writing. Because writing is the way that you can be the creator. When we talk about making, when we, at the project fair, and I was excited to see how much making activity. For me, writing is a form of making also. It's a way that you can share your ideas with others and you create things. So I think it's really important to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to grow up being able to share their ideas with others. And that's why to really be a full participant in today's society, I think over the last 100 years, we've agreed that writing is a core component of being a full and active participant in your community, in the society. But for me, this is really the same motivations for why I think it's important to learn to code. Although some people might learn to code and become a professional programmer, most people aren't going to become professional programmers. In my mind, learning to code is still important for the same reason that learning to write is important. That when you learn to code, you can express your ideas, you can share your ideas with others, you can make your own animated story to share with others. The same way that traditionally with writing, you write a poem and show it to someone else. With coding, you might make an animated story that you share with others. The same way that you might, with writing, with craft materials, make a birthday card for a friend, With coding, you make an animated and interactive birthday card for a friend. So it's a way you can sort of share with others. It's also a way of organizing your thinking. When you start to code, it leads you to think in new ways, to organize your thoughts, the same way that writing lets you to organize your thinking. So for me, this is one of the really important reasons why we want to get everyone to learn to code. Because regardless of what you do when you grow up, it's not if you're not, you don't have to be a professional programmer. If you grow up and you become a lawyer or a marketing manager or a community organizer or a politician, no matter what you do, it's going to be important to be able to express your ideas with new technologies and to be able to think clearly with new technologies in ways that coding helps you do that. So we've been working on this over the years, and this is what really motivated us to start on the Scratch software. And our Scratch software is something that we developed specifically with those goals in mind. That it wasn't just for computer science education for computer science majors, although it does get used in some computer science courses. Scratch is used in the beginning of the computer science course at Harvard and at Berkeley and a lot of major universities now. But that wasn't our main goal. Our main goal was to help young people grow up being able to create interactive stories and games and animations. And that was our goal with Scratch. And we were working on this for a long time now. In fact, being here at the conference reminds me of some of the history of Scratch. We started it a long time ago, like 2002 or 2003. Actually, yesterday at this session we had, I was talking with Carolyn Blue. We were remembering that the Teen Summit in 2004, more than 10 years ago, was the very first time we had kids trying out our first prototypes of Scratch. And Carolyn's son was at part of that first group that was trying out the early stages of Scratch. We kept working on it, revising it. The same way that kids in the clubhouse will try a project, keep revising it, iterating it. That's what we did with Scratch. And we learned a lot in 2004. We tried it again at the Teen Summit in 2006. And we were excited. We had a whole workshop there. And the clubhouse kids did things with Scratch that we never imagined. So we were always learning from them. And we really tried to design Scratch so that we'd let members of the clubhouses be able to express their ideas, make different types of animated stories and games, animations the way they really wanted to. And based on all that background, we then launched Scratch in 2007, and it got launched to the world. And people around the world then started using Scratch. It was about 8 years ago now. Next month will be the 8th anniversary when we released Scratch. You can see both with the new excitement around coding and because we've continued to upgrade Scratch and now have a web-based version. This is the bar graph of the number of projects being shared on the Scratch website. So you can see in the last couple of years, there's been this incredible growth. So this interest in coding is really leading more and more people to do coding in general and then Scratch in particular. So this past year, we've had close to 5 million projects shared on the Scratch website. Actually, just yesterday, we crossed the total number of projects shared on the Scratch website is now 9 million projects. So kids around the world are creating their interactive stories and games and then sharing them on the website. And this idea of sharing was important to us from the beginning. The same reason that at a conference like this, we have things like project fairs so you can share with one another and learn from one another. When we started Scratch, we started an online community for the same reason. We wanted kids to have an audience for what they were creating so others could try out what they were doing and that they could be inspired by others. And I think it was the first time ever that a programming language started right with an online community. But I think it's very much in the Clubhouse spirit. The same reason that with the Clubhouse and the guiding principles, one of the guiding principles is about designing and creating things, but another guiding principle is about doing it as part of a community where you're learning with and sharing with others. And we want to take those same Clubhouse ideas into Scratch. So Scratch is great for creating things, but it's also great for sharing and being part of a community. And we just see all that people learn as they share with one another on the Scratch website. So right now, every day there's about 15,000 new projects that are uploaded to the Scratch website. So it's exciting for us to see all the creative ways. We're always taken by surprise by all the different things that young people are doing with Scratch around the world. It's great to have those numbers and so many people using it, but for me, what's most exciting is to look at the particular cases and to see what individual kids are doing with Scratch and what they're learning with Scratch. So let me give you one example. So I'll talk about one member of the Scratch online community, and I've never met her or talked to her. Her Scratch username is Ipsy. And one of my graduate students saw some of the projects that Ipsy was doing, so I started looking as well. So I've become fascinated by the projects that Ipsy is doing. She shared about 100 projects on the Scratch online community. Although I've never talked to her, she described herself in the Scratch community. She described herself as a teenager from the Los Angeles area. Actually, her mother was Mexican, her father was born in the United States. She doesn't go to a clubhouse, but she could. Seems to me, just from reading about her, seems like the type of young people that you see every day. In one of her projects, she talks about some of the things she likes, Sailor Moon and Pokemon and Animal Crossing and Adventure Time. Living in Los Angeles is not surprising. She loves Disneyland. One of the things that she writes about that she really loves doing is she's always loved to draw. And she says she grew up drawing new pictures every day. The same way I think a lot of members of the clubhouses come in and they love drawing. And before she found Scratch, she'd never done much with computers and had never animated anything. She'd never written any code at all. But a friend showed her Scratch and said, actually, you could use Scratch to make your drawings come alive. And that really intrigued her. So she started learning Scratch so that she could make her drawings come alive. And this is one of the first projects she did. She had drawn a character called Molan, who's a Korean character. And you see, she just has this simple little animation. You see his eyes and his ears are moving. So she just did a little bit of code. So she was writing, she was still drawing, and then just did a little program to animate it, to make the ears go back and forth and the eyes move around. And this is her way of just testing things out. And I sort of like this because I think that's a good way of learning anything. Find a simple way where you can take something you're already familiar with, then add a little bit to it. Again, I saw in the project fair, we see things like with electronic textiles, where kids who are familiar with textiles, and then just add a little bit of electronics to it, it's a way to use what you're familiar with and start to expand it in new ways. So I like the way that Ipsy was doing that. But then before long, she was doing more and more elaborate programming. She really enjoyed reading the books, the Warrior Cats books. So this is a series of books some of you might be familiar with. They're very popular among some young people. I think it's one of the most popular. If you look at the number of books sold, it's after Harry Potter, it's one of the most popular book series. So she really enjoyed reading the Warrior Cats books. So she started doing Scratch projects where you could play one of the cats in the Warrior Cats books. So here's one of the projects that she did. So it's an adventure game where you get to choose the color of the pelt of your cat, you give a name to your cat, and then you can start exploring the world and interacting with other cats that are part of the clan in the Warrior Cats. And you go to the Warrior Den and you can meet other cats and the different challenges that you face. This is one way that she was able to take another thing that she really cared about, these books that she was reading, and bring them to life with Scratch. Perhaps what made her best known in the community and what brought her to our attention was this next project. She did a game called Lemonade Time that a lot of people started to notice. This got viewed like 20,000 times on the Scratch website. So it's a little game with this otter, and evidently you have to try to gather ingredients to make lemonade. So you have to search through the environment to find different things. You look for clues about where you're going to find the different ingredients to make lemonade. So it says if you need sugar, you have to find a lucky clover. So you start looking for lucky clover. Here's a lemon. So you click on the lemon, and you can then gather a lemon. As you go by, you can find other things. I think here, found a quarter, which you can then use later to buy some of the ingredients you need. So it's an adventure game. So a lot of the other people in the community really liked the artwork of this and liked the game, so it got viewed by lots of people. About 100 people remixed this, meaning they took her project and her programming code and made variations of it. They made changes to the images, to the code, to make their own version of Lemonade Time, maybe adding some new characters or some new challenges. So it became popular in the community. And because it was popular, other people in the community started asking Ipsy if she could help them with things that they were doing. Like they really liked her characters, and they said, could we use some of your characters in our projects? So she got so many of these requests, she ended up putting a project online that was a collection of her characters, and she said, here's a collection, you can use any of these characters in your stories and games. And you'll notice that I really love the beginning of this project. She started to brand her project. So you'll see it has a little Ipsy branding at the beginning of the project. From Ipsy Studio. And then it goes through and you can just choose whether it's animals or objects. And you can go through, find different things. And she encourages you to use her characters in your games, different backgrounds that you can use. But even though she started out loving drawing and continued to share her artwork with others, she also was sharing her programming. And the same way that she fell in love with drawing, she also fell in love with coding. So she started to get requests about, in the Lemonade Times story, you might have seen there was a scrolling background, as you see in a lot of games. But in fact, in Scratch, it's not so easy to make a scrolling background. We couldn't figure out some good ways to make it easy for kids to do scrolling backgrounds. But some kids, like Ipsy, figure out how to make scrolling backgrounds. So others started writing to her and say, can you show me how you made scrolling backgrounds? So she put up this project that's a basic scrolling game tutorial. And she explains how she made the scrolling backgrounds. She shows the scripts for it for other people to use. And then if you click see inside, where you can see how projects are made, she then even has different types of comments explaining it. So she's really sharing her ideas with others. So as we see this, it's exciting for us to see, young people work on projects like this, because this actually goes beyond what we were hoping for as we were developing Scratch. As the same way, again, as kids learn to write and to draw, to express themselves, you can see this in the same spirit, the same way that kids do creative writing. She's making these creative projects to share with the world. And I think as I look at what it is that Ipsy was doing, and again, I don't quite know the whole story because I haven't talked to her, but just from seeing what she's done, to me it's pretty clear that she's achieving what we had hoped for with Scratch. As we developed Scratch, we had said that our goals were to help young people learn to think creatively, reason systematically, and work collaboratively. And I think you can really see that with Ipsy. Certainly, those projects she was coming up with, she was doing so many things that we had never imagined before. Making these tutorials for others, or sharing her artwork, and making new games like the Lemonade Time game. She was clearly thinking creatively. But as she was working and writing the scripts and programs for those projects, she certainly had to learn to reason systematically. You have to think in a very systematic way to create those projects. And by sharing her work with others, she was learning to work collaboratively. And for me, these are three of the most important goals that we should have for young people today. To me, it's so much more important than any of the specific, concepts that they might learn in school. If kids grow up learning to think creatively, reason systematically, work collaboratively, they're really going to be ready for life in today's society, whether it's in their work life or their home life. I mean, just in your own everyday life, whether you're raising your own kids or preparing a birthday party for somebody or preparing a vacation, you need to think creatively, reason systematically, work collaboratively in things you do both in your work life and in your personal life. And we're really happy to see how kids using Scratch are able to do this. And in some ways, I do think, for me, this fits very much in the Clubhouse spirit. This is what we want for all Clubhouse kids, for going beyond just the specifics of any of the software that they learn. These are the type of goals that we want to have. With this, I do want to come back to those initial questions I started with, why learn to code and how learn to code. So for me, the why learn to code is about learning to think creatively, reason systematically, work collaboratively, being able to express yourself. And I think it's so important to keep that in mind because a lot of the efforts out there will just be focused on learning the skill of coding. I think we want to make sure that it's about learning these other things, about creative thinking and systematic reasoning. And I think the best way to achieve that is through a Clubhouse-style approach to learning. If you go to a lot of the coding sites these days, they take, I think, a somewhat different approach to learning. You go to a lot of sites, and you'll see different types of puzzles for learning to code. and you'll have to get one character from one place to another. This is one that's based on Angry Birds. You put different coding blocks together to get one character to another. And again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this. When I was growing up, I loved to solve puzzles. So I'm sure I would have enjoyed this growing up. Some of the members of your clubhouses, I'm sure, would enjoy doing this. But for me, if all you do is learn to solve puzzles, you might learn, some particular concept and you solve the puzzle, but it's not something that sustains you over time. So for me, it's, the way we want people to learn to code is not just by solving puzzles to learn some specific concepts, but more about by creating their own projects in the clubhouse style. The same way that when young people come into a clubhouse, again, whether they're using cardboard or craft materials or Lego bricks or soldering irons or 3D printers or Scratch, we engage young people in a project-based approach. And I think that's the best way of learning to code as well. So the kids aren't just solving a puzzle or solving a problem that's given to them, but they're creating their own projects based on their own ideas. I think that's what we've really tried to do with Scratch, is to make sure that it's open for kids to take things that they really care about and then make projects that they can share with others. Now again, there's still sometimes challenges with this. No matter how much effort we put into making a tool like Scratch, it doesn't mean that people are going to use it the way that we intended to. So actually, I'll tell you a story about as we put Scratch out to the world, sometimes we're delighted with what we see. When we see online what IPSI did, we're so delighted at how kids are making use of Scratch. But then we see some things that don't really line up with how we wanted or expected people to use it. It's like, at one point, we looked at the Scratch website, and we saw that there was just like several dozen projects that looked identical. They were all uploaded right about the same time. And at first we thought, well, maybe there was some problem with our software that was replicating this project many times. But it wasn't a problem with our software. We looked, and each of the projects, even though they were identical, were made by different people. And it turned out we looked into it, and it was from a classroom in Korea where the teacher evidently said, okay, we're going to learn Scratch today. Everybody do this. No, everybody do this. No, everybody do this. Now everybody share your project. So there's 40 identical projects all uploaded to the Scratch website. So just because we designed Scratch to be project-based and build on your own interest and share with one another, doesn't mean it always gets used that way. So it's a challenge. And I think that's a challenge that we all face in clubhouses as well. No matter what software, materials, and technologies you have, it's, oftentimes the coordinators, the mentors, and the longtime clubhouse members who bring the spirit of the clubhouse, the approach to designing and creating things. And that's another thing that we have to think about with Scratch. It's not enough just to make the software, but how can we support it? So we spend a lot of time in the Scratch community, putting up example projects, and giving comments on people's projects, and encouraging when people are doing creative work, like IPSI is doing, and sharing our ideas about how it might be used, and helping to support longtime Scratchers who help spread those ideas through the community, the same way that you support your longtime clubhouse members. But it's an ongoing effort on our part, both to continue to enhance the software to make sure that kids can really make the things they most want to make, but also to provide the support so that they're able to succeed in the way we want to help them make it. So I want to spend a little time talking about some of the ways that we're continuing to work on Scratch, because even though it's been out for 8 years, we feel there's still a lot of work to be done. And this is something I feel that we've gained a lot from previous Clubhouse annual conferences. We've had a number of sessions at the last few annual conferences where we've gotten lots of ideas from you. We've also gotten ideas from Team Summits about what is it that we could do to try to make Scratch fit in better in the activities at the clubhouse and to better meet the needs of the members at computer clubhouses. And we're continuing to try that. So let me just tell you about a few of the things that we're working on this year. One thing that we've heard from you and from others is that although it's great that Scratch is so open-ended, you can do so many different things with it and be so creative with it, sometimes for certain kids who start using Scratch and certain clubhouse members, they can feel a little bit lost. They're not quite sure how to get started. And even though you can look at different projects there and see how other people did things, sometimes you need a little bit more support on how to get started, whether you're a kid or a mentor or a coordinator. So one thing we've been doing is we have a new part of the Scratch interface. Actually, I'll show it to you now. It's called the tips window. So here's the Scratch interface. So, and as you probably see, if I drag out the move block, if I click on move, the cat will move. If I click on, I add a sound. Put this up a little bit. Now I can, have to play different sounds. So you can, get started. There's a cymbal sound. If I put them together, we'll move out and play a sound. So again, it's pretty easy to drag out blocks and get started. But then, how do I go from this to making my own games, my own stories the way I want to? So what we recently added is we have what's called the tips window. And over here on the right-hand side, there's a little question mark. If I click on that, this tips window comes out. As you can also, up here in the menu, it says tips. I can also click on that and it comes out. And one of the things we have here is we have some different step-by-step guides to help you get started on a different range of projects. So we wanted to make sure there was a range of activities. So one says animate your name, or dance, 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 or create a Pong game, or make a birthday card, or create a virtual pet. So we tried to have a range of different things you might be interested in doing. But if you're interested in one, like animate your name, again, each one has a little video that explains what you can learn in this step-by-step tutorial.
You can use Scratch to animate your name and bring it to life. Make the letters spin, grow, jump, or interact however you like. These steps show you how to start animating your name by snapping together blocks.
So again, you can see the video, but then there's sort of step-by-step. You can go through, and it sort of tells you, gives you an example of how to take the first letter name, some things to do, but it also leaves it open-ended. So it tries to give you step-by-step structure for getting started, and then show you lots of different paths that you can take afterwards. And again, these are things these are still quite new. In fact, we had a session yesterday that Chris Garrity and I ran, and with some of you, and we got some good feedback there. Again, trying to see what it is that will work well in clubhouses. So we'd love to get your feedback on these. And again, we're trying to think, as we do it, also what types of activities are going to be most interesting for Clubhouse members. So actually, one thing we're putting a lot of energy into is something around dance moves. So we're having a lot of ways to help move different characters. We found that that's a really nice way to reach out to kids who might not have imagined themselves as being interested in coding in the past, but if they can put images of themselves into the computer and then program dance moves. And actually, being a choreographer for a dance is pretty similar to being a programmer. So we try to see how, if you're interested in dancing and choreographing moves, it can lead into thinking about coding. So similarly, you can go through the different steps. Also, for each of these tutorials, we have a studio that has lots of sample projects. So you can go and see what other people did and the different types of dance moves that other people programmed. I'll just show you one example here, just to give you an idea of it. Like here's one project that someone did based on. So again, they just took lots of images themselves. They did type of blue screen where they sort of cut out their own images. Use different shadowing techniques, so you can just on the different characters, the good color changing. And I like this because it's really showing somebody to take advantage of the power of programming. I think it's some of the flexibility you get of being able to manipulate characters and what it looks like in the images and the sounds. I think the programming really gives a real advantage of being able to do that. So we're really interested in trying to see how we can have more sample projects like this and tutorials to support young people who might want to get started this way. We also are making materials for coordinators. It's like they're called facilitator guides. So this is one where it's sort of a way that you can help introduce this to young people. So again, what we have inside of that tips window is really meant for Clubhouse members or other young people to start learning how to make the projects. But then if you want to introduce it and to do some brainstorming about different ways that you might integrate dance with other activities in the clubhouse, that this facilitator guide is intended for facilitators, coordinators about ways of introducing it. So this is something else again we'd love to get your feedback on. We showed a few of these in our session yesterday. I know Chris said that she was going to put these up on the village. So if you go to the village, these are still drafts, but feel free to use them. We'd love to get feedback, you know, as you try them out. So we go back to some of the other things that we're planning to do with Scratch this year. Another thing that actually also grew out of some conversations we've had with people in the Clubhouse community is that as much as we try to make Scratch of interest to a wide range of different people and to a wide range of ages, when we developed Scratch, we said we wanted it to be for age 8 to 16 and for people from all different backgrounds. Well, it's not easy to make one thing that's going to work across people from all different backgrounds and different interests. And we have heard from some people in the Clubhouse community that the images that come with Scratch aren't necessarily the right images that connect in with people at certain clubhouses. So what we want to do is to have a better range of images. And we thought one way of doing that is to bring in images from the community. So we're having what we're calling the Community Image Library. They'll be launching hopefully later this year, where in addition to with Scratch, anybody can bring in their own image from online. You can go to a website, grab an image, bring it in. But if we were just look at a library, right now Scratch just has a library of images that we created with some local illustrators. But again, it's narrow in certain ways. So what we're doing now is that when people create a project in Scratch, for any of their images, they could click a button that says, I want to add this image to the community library. And there'll be some members in the community that will then look at all of those images that were nominated, and mostly it's just to filter out things that really don't fit. But most of them will have it up there, and then we'll try to find better ways to help people search through them with keywords. It'll be easier. So like this is one example where we had different people put up dancing images. We're starting to add more dance images for things. So we're trying to see how we can draw on the community at large, the same way that right now there are all these different projects of different styles from Scratch. There should also be a way that you can get images of all different styles that sort of fit better with the needs of different clubhouses. Even within the clubhouse community, there'll be a big diversity. A clubhouse in one place might want different types of images than a clubhouse elsewhere. So we're trying to make these, this community image library where you can make your own subsets that might be particularly of interest for the clubhouse where you are. So that's something else we're working on. We're also trying to do more. There's always been a lot of connecting Scratch to the physical world. I saw some examples of the project fair connecting with Makey. This is a video that was made connecting Scratch with the Lego redo kits. So there's already been some of this, but this time we're trying to do much more. We're going to make it easier for developers to connect Scratch to other physical sensors, motors, and robotics kits, because there's been this growing range of different types of electronic kits that have been coming out in recent years. Things, everything from little bits to Sphero to all types of different robots and robot construction kits. So we're making it easier to connect Scratch to all these different things in the physical world. That's one thing that will engage the interest of some kids. But in addition to connecting to the physical world, we also want to connect better with the online world. So like right now in Scratch, if I want to, I can make a Scratch project that has some information on it about the weather, last year in some part of the United States. But for the Scratch project, I can't pull in weather data of what it's like right now. So we're adding a way for people to be able to have Scratch blocks that pull in data from online. So you could go to an online data source that has the temperature wherever you live, and it can pull that into your Scratch project. That you can say something about the weather based on what the temperature is. But you can draw on all sorts of other data as well. Like if someone has a Facebook account, they could pull in their latest post into their Scratch project. So we wanted to have Scratch not just be this isolated world, but both connect to the physical world and connect to the online world. And we've already done some of that. We're trying to make it much easier. So it's not just our group at MIT doing this, but we're trying to provide the APIs so that developers everywhere can connect Scratch to these other data sources and online web services. So that's something else that we hope will come out with in the next year. Here's something that I'm not sure if this will be useful for clubhouses or not, to be honest. this is something that came from, there's a strong demand from schools that they want to have what are called educator accounts. Because right now, every account on Scratch, every member has their own account. And teachers said they really want to be able to gather together all the kids in the class, either to make it easier to make accounts for everybody, to be able to keep track of what everybody's working on. And again, the keeping track of is not something that is at the top of my list. On the other hand, I do think there's something nice about being able to make a group and then be able to see all the projects done by people in that group. So that's one thing that you could get here. So it'd be easier to make accounts for, again, a clubhouse, if you wanted to, make accounts for a whole range of kids more easily, and then be able to have all the projects go into a gallery or what we now call studios to share all the things together rather than on an individual case basis doing it. So again, this time we're doing, that I think was driven mostly by requests from schools, but maybe could be useful for clubhouses, we'll see. We're also trying to, right now Scratch is being used mostly on laptops. But we know that in the world these days, many more people are starting to use tablets, doing more mobile devices. This time we want to make sure that Scratch keeps up with that. Right now, Scratch does not run well on most tablets. So right now we're working on making a version of Scratch to work well with iPads and Android tablets. It's a bit of a challenge because on the Scratch editor, it takes up the full screen. So it's not so easy to squeeze it down to the smaller tablets. We're working hard on that. Actually, Intel's been very supportive of this because they've had a strong interest in more, doing more things with mobile devices as the world goes more and more that way. So we've been working together with them and others to make sure that we can have a tablet version of Scratch that we'll be working on this year. We'll be working with a few clubhouses as we develop this. In fact, if you're interested in this, let me know, because we're going to work with a few clubhouses as we develop it. And the goal is to have it ready by next year, so ready for all clubhouses to use by next year. We're also doing more with events around Scratch. I probably mentioned some previous times. We have something called Scratch Day. It happens every May. So it's just a few weeks from now. This year until May 9th. And I just took this to the website. You can already see there's more than 100 Scratch Days around the world. This is where, on Scratch Day, we just encourage people to hold an event where they have workshops or exhibitions around Scratch. And it doesn't have to be a big deal. We have one at MIT, but everyone could have one. Just at your clubhouse, you could use this as an excuse to say, let's do a Scratch workshop and put it up there as a Scratch Day, and maybe other people will see it and new members will come in to try to, it might be a way to, connect together, also to see what other people are doing with Scratch around the world. So if you go to the Scratch Day website, you can register to have your own event, see what other people are doing on Scratch Day. And although the day is May 9th, you can do it any day. It's nice to try to do it where you can feel that you're part of a bigger movement, but you can do it every day can be Scratch Day. I sort of want to shift over to, even though I've been talking a lot about Scratch, we're also doing lots of other things with our group at the MIT Media Lab. And I want to mention a few things that our group at the Media Lab is doing here at the conference, just so you're aware what's coming up, and you might be able to seek some of these things out if you're interested in it. I mentioned yesterday already, Chris and I did a workshop on new pathways into Scratch, and we really enjoyed, interacting with some of you around that workshop. There are a bunch more activities coming up. Today, Tiffany from our group is doing a project, a workshop on capturing design process in youth portfolios. They'll be using the Build in Progress, which I know a lot of you have used Build in Progress. They're also using a new technology and documenting system that Tiffany's been working on, and she was showing it off in the project fair, called Spin. So it's a way you can connect a camera, and if you're making some physical device, whether you're making it with Lego bricks or craft materials or 3D printing, you can put it and it'll actually make a video of it spinning around. So it's a new way for you to document the things that you're making. Then online, you can share as you continue to work on things, show different stages of it. So here you'll get to see more about things with Build in Progress and the Spin project that Tiffany's working on. Also this afternoon, Chris will be leading a workshop along with Studio 52 fellows and others about taking Studio 52 further. Tomorrow, there'll be a session that Alicia Panjwani from our group, along with Danielle and others, will be doing on from start to keep making, sort of building on the great work that Danielle, Alicia, and so many of you have been working on over the past year, thinking about taking it to the next step. Also, there's this Media Lab technology called Unhangouts. It's an online way to have people be able to get together in groups and both meet online and discuss things online in small groups. And I know that Danielle's been using this as part of maybe even in this session right now. I think we have an Unhangout for people who aren't here. We're using this is the Unhangout was developed by Philip Schmidt, who's a member of our group, and along with some of the other students in the group, make this technology makes it easier to have these online groups for sharing things together. It's being used during the conference, but maybe some of you can make use of in your clubhouses. Also, there are a couple full-day workshops. On Thursday, there's a workshop around the hip-hop scratch that I was mentioning earlier with dance, music, and coding. That will be, actually, Chris will be working with that, and also Rick Rose and Champika. Actually, Rick Rose is still with our group. Champika, some of you met who graduated from our group, is now back at Google. I think Franklin is involved in that as well, from South Boston. So that's a workshop on Thursday. And on Friday, Alicia's doing an e-textile workshop, textile narrative story making with e-textiles. So again, there are lots of opportunities to connect with different work that's going on in our group, both with Scratch and all the other things that we're doing in our group. And we'd love to find more ways to continue to keep connections, not just to the annual conference where you can do this, but let us know if there are ways that we can continue to work together during the year. Maybe, I think I'm just going to end up with reflecting back on something from this past weekend. Again, I really enjoyed coming here a bit early this weekend to meet with the alumni, summit that was here. And I know that you heard some about it yesterday, and I was here. It was great hearing the alumni panel here yesterday. And for me, it was really exciting because I do think for me it captures, some of the things that are most important about the clubhouse. The same way that the conference is not just something for one day, but we want to learn things here to last us through the whole year. And the clubhouse is not something you just learn on a day-to-day basis, but something that lasts a lifetime. And I think I saw a lot of that, in talking to the clubhouse alumni. And as I was meeting with the alumni, I'll sort of tell a story that I was sharing with them that for me it captured some of the clubhouse spirit. It was coming back to my mind and meeting with clubhouse alumni. And this is from, it happened a couple of years ago. It was around the holiday time in December. And it was at the mall that's right near the Museum of Science with the flagship clubhouse. And I was doing some holiday shopping. It was at the Best Buy. Actually, it doesn't have anything to do with the Best Buy sponsorship of the clubhouse. I just happened to be at Best Buy. And as I was doing my holiday shopping there, someone called out, "Mitch." And I looked around and I didn't recognize who it was. I said, "It's me, Vladimir." And he said, "From the clubhouse." And all of a sudden I realized, this is a clubhouse member that I hadn't seen in more than 10 years. He'd been at the flagship clubhouse in the 1990s, on the early days of the clubhouse. And in those early days, I was spending a lot of time there, and I'd gotten to know him. But I hadn't seen him in more than a decade. And I started talking to him. He was in his mid-20s, and he pulled out his wallet. He showed me a picture of his kid that he was so proud of. And he talked about the things that he was doing. His current job didn't have anything directly to do with technology. But to me, that wasn't what was important. For me, it's not the essence of what the clubhouse is about. He told me about the work he was doing and his passion for his work and how he found his job by following his interests. He told me about his hobbies and his network of friends and how he was working together with them on some new types of photography projects. And as I heard him talking about the things of what his life was about, it really made me realize that he was sort of living a clubhouse life. And we think about those guiding principles of the clubhouse of creating projects, of following your interests, of being part of a community, of supporting an environment of respect and trust. That's what Vladimir was doing. And Vladimir wasn't spending a lot of time back at the clubhouse. It's not that he remained a strong connection with the clubhouse itself, but he had a strong connection with the clubhouse just with the way he was living his life. And for me, that was one of the most important things and one of the most satisfying things, when I see a young person like that, where the clubhouse, it sort of really got, it really influenced the way they were leading their lives. And clearly, he was then influencing lots of others. So that was his way. He'd really taken what he learned at the clubhouse, and he was sort of both living his life that way and sharing that approach to life with others. So for me, that was sort of one of the most important lessons that we could get at. And it's great if you and Clubhouse Bill can stay connected and stay working at clubhouses, and I encourage everyone to do that. But I think what we can be most proud of is, as all the young people that you're working with at your clubhouses, my hope is that 10 years from now, when you bump into them, that you can be just as proud of them as I was of Vladimir, when I met with them. Thanks very much.
Well, as usual, Mitchell, you have inspired us and left us with a feeling of both your commitment and dedication to the clubhouse and our own. I know every year everyone looks forward to hearing your words of wisdom and experience. So, it's great to hear how much the clubhouse has influenced the work that you do at the MIT Media Lab every day. And I know you know that the opposite is true as well. So thank you. With that, we're going to break for lunch. We heard of advertising.